Welcome back to Backroom Talk. This season, we're bringing you behind-the-scenes conversations with awesome coaches shaping the future of fitness. I'm your host, Candace Dixon, CMO of OPEX and CoachRx. In this episode, I sit down with Austin Kapetanakis, or Coach Cap as we call him, where he shares his journey on becoming a professional coach. Austin dives into the importance of understanding each client's unique needs and motivations in order to design and effectively coach. He walks us through the evolution of his coaching systems, finding the right balance between in-person and remote coaching, and how lifestyle and nutrition play into the bigger picture of his coaching. Austin brings great perspective on staying authentic in your coaching approach, learning from your mistakes along the way. What really shines through is his emphasis on how meaningful connections impact both coaching effectiveness, client success, and not to mention his overall fulfillment. Whether you're a career coach or thinking about coaching as your next move, this episode is packed with insights. All right, let's jump into my chat with Austin. It's good to see you, by the way. It feels like it's been way too long.
I was going to say probably like over a year for sure.
Well, thank you for being willing to sit down and have this very casual coaches chat with me. I'm excited to bring back Backroom Talk in this new way this year, which is just literally letting you guys take the stage and talk about all the awesome things that you're doing in your lives.
Yeah, awesome. I'm pumped to be here.
So I've only had one other chat so far in this new series with Brandon Gallagher, and you are my second discussion, and they were both today. So hopefully we get even better the second time.
Yeah, usually that's how it goes, right? It's like you get your rep in and then you figure out a flow.
Yeah. Well, this is just intended to literally be all about you and us just kind of going over, well, one, I want you to introduce yourself to all the listeners because we're gonna put this up on podcasts and YouTube and everything like that. But introduce yourself. Let's start with like what your coaching practice currently looks like, and then we'll kind of rewind and go from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Austin Kapetanakis. I go by Coach Cap for short. You can imagine Kapetanakis is a bit of a challenge for some people to pronounce. And I'm a fitness coach, fitness professional, graduated CCP about maybe like 4 or 5 years at this point. And my coaching business is primarily in person. And when I say in person, it's a mix of private or small group training and then a more of open gym individual design session. So our gym is not your typical CrossFit gym. I would call it a private gym that we offer private training, individualized, open gym sessions, and then of course, CrossFit group classes. So between those three things is where I spend the majority of my time besides doing, creating programs on CoachRx and on my computer. That's pretty much how I spend my time in my business, either on the coaching floor or behind the computer.
And you also do camps, right?
Yeah, actually. So we do at this point now twice a year, we do training camps. So my business partner, Sam Smith, and then our silent partner, Jay, he's the guy that runs the gym. Jay's great as well. Hudson River Athletics. Between the three of us, we host camps and they're primarily geared towards CrossFit athletes. We've done one more general, like the format, and that's really for anyone looking for insight into their fitness, whether that's I would say within the functional fitness realm. So if you're a bodybuilder, you probably wouldn't get much value from it, but if you're into functional fitness, for sure. And then we've done more serious, that's the wrong word, more competitive camps for the higher level competitor or who wants to well, now the season's changed, but it was 4 quarterfinals and that's now a legacy. So going forward, we figure out a way to elevate it towards the new path. But yeah, generally training camps for those interested in learning more about their fitness and how they can improve in the sport of CrossFit.
Personal question for you, because I know you're also an athlete on top of being a coach. Have you dabbled into high rocks at all? And are you considering that personally?
I haven't. I have been running a lot more though. So this year I've been running in conjunction with my CrossFit training, adding in running sessions, and I'm really enjoying it. I would say currently I wouldn't be able to be, not that I wouldn't be able to, but the running is geared more towards a 5K or 3.1 miles, and high rocks, but the task is basically a 10K or 6.2 miles. So not really training for that. I think it's an awesome alternative, and I never say never. I would say right now, probably not, but I'm open to it. But just like a lot of the training's been geared more towards the competitive CrossFit season.
Okay. So you are still focused in actively competing in CrossFit.
Yeah, that's primarily, and we've added running to my program because A, I enjoy it. And B, I think it has a great carryover for just general fitness. And as you get later into the season and into different parts of the season and different competitions, some of the organizers may test running. And plus, I just like it. Fun fact, I used to be a running coach for New York Roadrunners before I got into fitness coaching. And I've also run 2 marathons. So before I got into CrossFit, I was basically a big runner.
It's interesting how the trend has kind of come full circle again with like running clubs coming back into the scene. Is that what you started, coaching an actual running club with the New York Roadrunners?
Yeah. I guess you call it a running club. Yeah, it was, and they still exist. It's called Team for Kids, which was a subsidiary of New York Roadrunners. They have so many different running clubs, and that running club was geared towards kids, and basically it was you would fundraise for underserved youth in New York City, and a lot of those funds would help these kids, which I think actually ties into what I do now today. So everything's connected. But at the time, it was helping these kids get access to, like, they called it physical literacy, using their body, access to like gym class and sneakers and things that we may take for granted. And to me, it resonated because, I'm now devoting my whole life to fitness, but fitness has always been super important to me and transformative to me. And so it seemed like something that made sense. And maybe there was a bigger plan working out because, now I'm doing it as a living, but I clearly care a lot about fitness. So it just made sense. Like, okay, yeah, I could get behind fundraising for this cause. And then as a natural extension, I just always find myself, if I really find a cause I care about or something that is, calls to me, I want to kind of like, it's not like ascend the ladder. That's not necessarily the term. I would say more of like take on a larger role. And the reason being wanting to connect and share the message. And just like I've done with OPEX and become an ambassador and associate coach, it's been really rooted in like, wow, this is so important to me. And this has changed my whole life. So I've always found by stepping into larger roles, you're able to share that impact besides just making it about yourself.
Oh, yeah. Agree. I know. I think that's why one of the things I appreciate about you so much, you're always so willing to just give of your time and knowledge and kind of pay it forward in that sense. Well, take me back to the beginning. So I know a little bit about your journey, but obviously for everyone else, and I want to know the details, like how did you actually, what was your first love in fitness and how did that get you started to the point where you knew you wanted to become a professional coach as a career?
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up, I've always played sports. You had just the general run of the mill, like tennis, well, basketball, soccer. I was never allowed to play football. My parents didn't want me to because they were afraid I would get hurt. But every other sport was on the table: baseball, golf, tennis. And as I got older to my teenage years, my brother and myself, we really shifted towards tennis, and that was the main sport. And that basically led him and I through college we went to different schools, but we both played through college. And that was our main fitness. And it wasn't until I was 18, I would say. So my freshman year, sophomore year of college, where I actually stepped foot into a gym. And I had a couple of buddies that invited me. And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds like something that, might interest me. And I actually was really, really like the smaller kid growing up and really skinny and pretty fragile. And so the thought of me working out, to anyone at that time was pretty laughable, probably to myself too. And then I just remember my friend saying like, because I used to be, it's funny because people that know me now would be like, that's not you. But I used to be very not disciplined and very not like following a path and kind of just willy nilly. And they were like, if you could do it for a month, we'd be super impressed. Like, that's it. Like, don't think about doing it for a year. Just like, if you can come to the gym for a month, that would be awesome. And I was like, okay, I could definitely do that. And I don't think anyone, myself included, really thought that it would resonate with me so much. And it just did it. So that was in 18. So I'm 31 now. And that was your classic bodybuilding where, to be honest, I didn't really know what I was doing and neither did my friends, but like your classic, chest on Mondays, back buys, bro splits, hardly do legs. And if you do legs, you're not really squatting past, 90 degrees, but it worked. And, I found like right then and there more the therapeutic benefits as anyone, listening to this, obviously I'm sure knows, or people that work out, know or train obviously it's great for the body, but I think what people stay for, at least what I do, is more of the mental, emotional benefits that like, oh wow, okay, I was stressed or something going into the session, and then it kind of put my life into perspective. Or you kind of leave the gym a different person than who walked in, and you kind of just get perspective. I think would be a great word for that. And then it doesn't make your problems go away, but I find it allows you some space around whatever's going on. So that was 18. Throughout college, I still lifted while I played sports. And then I would say fast forward, I graduated, and then tennis stopped because I wasn't going anywhere with that. And then that was great, but that finished it. So I was really looking for something to fill that void of, okay, I just graduated college. Yes, I have a job now. I worked in the city in corporate America, but I was missing the team aspect that I found, what I got from tennis. And that's where, of course, CrossFit, and someone that's been to a CrossFit affiliate would know, that's where you can find a sense of camaraderie and people like training together, and similar to what we started with the group fitness, the group running with the team for kids. So being in that was like my foray from bodybuilding, which I found was always really like, I could be isolated. Like, you would see people in the gym, say hello, chit chat a little bit, but it was pretty, you're on your own. You have, Candace a split, Austin split, the other guy, he's doing his split over there.
Headphones in.
Exactly. And then I found CrossFit, and it was like this community aspect, and we're all doing the same workout, and we're all moving towards this direction. And then the running group, the same idea. I was like, we're all training for the marathon. Now, granted, people are at different fitness levels, but I was like, oh, there's like something here that interested me. And I usually just kind of follow my intuition in the sense of like, if it feels good and it makes me happy, I'm going to just see where it leads me. And that led down dabbling, so I was always enjoying fitness and always participating in fitness now from 18, 19, 20, 21, all throughout my 20s. And it wasn't really until, well, I also add one more thing too, because I feel like I would be doing, not mentioning a really important chapter in my life. I was also, I still am, but I was also really into yoga as well. And I had got my yoga teacher training. So now I was a running coach and a yoga teacher. And I never had any fitness trainings though back then. And I was just avidly lifting weights. For whatever reason, whether it was conscious or unconscious, I was like, I don't think I could be a fitness pro, just because like I'm not that type of person. I'm not the strongest, fittest, whatever story we make up in our head. And yeah, okay. So now going through my 20s, it wasn't until 2020, when COVID year, as I'm sure so many people's lives have changed dramatically, I lost my job. I was in the travel industry working in HR, and we got hit first, right? Travel was eliminated immediately. So it wasn't long, I lost my job. And of course I was upset, and, I was sad and confused, and the whole world was, how long is it going to last? What am I going to do? But, something really deep down was like, I think I'm done here. And I don't know why COVID was the time to do it, right? But I was like, yeah, I think this is the time to shift gears. And I actually I followed the yoga path. So that was my first business. I started teaching, well, it was remote at the time, as everyone knows, in COVID, you weren't allowed to be in person. And then as things started to open up, I started to offer group and private yoga sessions, and that was doing well. And I was teaching at a bunch of other studios in Hoboken and New York City, but I kind of felt limited in what I could offer and how I could grow. And I didn't want to open a yoga studio. So I knew I had to pivot again. And at that time, I had a lot of free time because I wasn't working, well, besides launching my yoga career. And I just really started like hammering CrossFit and the gentleman I mentioned earlier, Jay, the owner of Hudson River Athletics, I just started spending a lot of time with him and at his gym. And I remember, clear as day, we were working out one day, and I was like, hey, I have some free time. I'm kind of doing this yoga thing, but I think I really want to learn more about like coaching CrossFit class and doing personal training. And I would love to learn how to design workouts. And he was like, you have to do OPEX. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And, it's just how funny how these things turn out. But I trusted him and I believed in him, and he believed in me. And he was like, look it up. They'll walk you through start to finish, and just like trust me, like if you want to learn how to be like one of the best in the industry, be an elite coach, OPEX through and through. And I really did not know what OPEX was at the time. But I trusted this man. Luckily, I had great guidance. And then, the rest is history. I signed up basically like a week later. I was like, hey, okay, I'm going to do this, and signed up for CCP. And through, circumstances, the universe, whatever you want to call it, hard work, intuition, luck, one thing has led to another. And I really couldn't be more blessed and more grateful to do what I love and share what I love and be a part of the OPEX community, from like, I remember being in a room just studying and listening to James talk and be like, I don't even know what, making sense, what's up or down, left or right. And then, flown out to Arizona when the headquarters were in Arizona, multiple times, which was incredible. And then wanted to be a part of LearnRx and, have the mobility class, LearnRx, and the continuation of being an ambassador and gladly, willingly being an ambassador for the program. So yeah, it's been a, no one's, I think, path is very clear cut, but I wasn't planning on like, this is what I'm going to do, but it just kind of ended up that way.
Do you feel like your personal journey as an athlete being coached within this system, as well as kind of pairing that with yourself going through the education and kind of discovering where you wanted it to go, did those two things kind of like merge together to get you to this point? Or did you keep those paths kind of separate? Like, I'm going to focus on Austin as the athlete versus Austin as the professional separately?
No, I think quite the opposite. I think, intertwining them or integrating them and kind of I think it's a really unique opportunity that I have, that again, I'm fortunate to have a career and a space, and also, the health of my body, which again, I could be very critical. Like, I'm not strong enough, fit enough, but to really be grateful for what my body can do, because it is in my opinion, the best learning in our industry, because there's no better way to explain to someone what something is not supposed to, but what something will feel like, or trying to explain it. And I think there's certain intricacies that you can only learn, not only because I'm sure there are people that can teach without doing, but I think you do have to have get your hands dirty a little bit and at least work out, right? Or at least know what it's like to do resistance training, to hype up, to do the 10-minute test, right? Bike test, the classic OPEX assessment, like, to go through that and be like, this is what's going to feel like, so that you can, I think, create that credibility with your client. And also for me, even to this day, that's what I continue. A lot of my content, I enjoy posting it because it's to me just a natural extension of my day to day. I'm like, hey, here's what I'm working on, and here's what I'm learning, and here's what I understand it as. And I find that doing it in my own training helps me learn. And one of my mentors would say, don't just train, learn. And that's what I really try to do in my training. I'm trying to learn and assimilate. Okay, what does this actually mean, and how is this relevant to the broader population?
You just hit on a key word that I wanted to chat with you about, because outside of going through education and using yourself as a live learning experiment, mentorship plays a big role for most of us. What has mentorship looked like for you as you've shaped your professional journey?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's the formal mentorship, right, of the education of CCP. That was the the foundation, really, right? And I think that's a great first step. And then having, at the time, I'm sure, I don't know what it looks like now, but I know at the time, OPEX basically was like, here's step two. I don't think you guys have now integrated it, right, as part of the curriculum. But when I went through it, it was more of step one was go through CCP. And then step two was work with one of the list of mentors. So for me, that was just made the most sense around, because, CCP is fantastic and you have all this information. And then I think the mastery comes in applying it and being willing to not be so afraid. Because I know when I first started, whether it's fear, or whatnot, you're like, I don't know if I could, this is how they, OPEX does it, but how do I do it? And having that mentor guide you, and I think having someone to talk to, be like, yeah, like that's totally normal, and here's how you do it. And then encouraging you to go out and fail on purpose, right? But, I remember James would say on one of the calls, like, he would not but he would always think it was a great learning when a coach would go out and make a mistake, because he's like, they're going to improve from that. And at least they're growing and they're trying to having, it's like the famous quote, you stand on the shoulders of giants, right? It's like standing on the shoulders of James, and then, Sam Smith, and then also James's brother, Michael, and I could list so many mentors, but the mentorship, I think, is, you can't put a price on it, because these are people that have done what you want to do. And I think it can really, accelerate the learning curve. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to do it yourself, but I think having the mentorship will accelerate.
Are you still actively pursuing or within a mentorship kind of interaction with someone, as well as your like coach relationship, or have those two things kind of become one for you?
Yeah, so Sam is still my fitness coach. He writes my program as I write my clients' programs, and I think everyone should have a coach. I know he has a coach, and in the sense that we have blind spots, I think, in a certain way, and certain things, it allows me to kind of, it could be tricky because you want to take care of your own fitness, I believe, but you also want to take care of your clients. And I found that, if I take care of myself by kind of like letting somebody else take care of me, it actually does me a great service, which in turn does my clients a great service. And so, yeah, I work with Sam ongoingly still to this day. And also with Michael Fitzgerald, who's, James's brother. He's also become a close mentor of mine, and someone I can ask questions with and have studied with. And, and even just whether it's referring back to the LearnRx videos and CCP videos, and just kind of reintegrating them at different times in my life and being like, oh, okay, I thought I got it then, but then I get it now. And that's something I think I'll always be, and the funny thing is James is the mentor of both of those, right? Of Michael and of Sam as well. And it's just, that's how you pay it forward. And, I hope one day I can be a mentor to someone else, just kind of like, everyone that's been before me.
I mean, I'm sure you are, even through the camps, right? You guys have a lot of coaches that come into the camps as athletes, but are also getting coaches by that. So I'm sure that has already allowed you to start that aspect of your coaching career.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, and I'm like, yeah, actually I am. And I guess I don't sometimes see myself in that role, because I'm kind of always, I guess sometimes we have that perception of ourselves. But you're totally right. And if I look back and how my client list has grown, and the populations I work with, I am mentoring quite a bit and sharing my wisdom that I've learned just through trial and error. So yeah, it's just been really cool to see, and kind of how that next iteration will work, especially with the, 2025's coming. So what that brings is a whole new calendar year, a whole new season. And this, yeah, trying to, like you said, teaching and sharing from my own experience. And I think that also adds a bit more degree of meaning, of like, okay, I'm not just doing this to be fit, which is great. And of course I want to do that, right? Who doesn't want to be fit? But I am doing this for a deeper meaning of sharing this and wanting to teach those who are interested. Like, yeah, here's a way of doing it. Here's what I've learned, and take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. If I remember back, COVID was not that long ago. So in the last couple of years, you've gone from not necessarily having a book of clients or a roster of clients that you're actively coaching, to really having like a thriving career. What was that process like for you, outside of just the learning and the education, but actually growing your client roster? Or I don't know if there's anything you want to share about that specifically, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, no, sure. I would love to. I think I started with, as anyone does, zero, right? Very humbling place not too long ago. I would say I want to call it luck. I'm sure there's some luck involved, but I've worked really hard. But the first thing I would say actually is I've had wonderful people in my life. So let me say that, because I want to give thanks and gratitude where it belongs. And there's an Arnold Schwarzenegger quote where he's like, "Never call me a self-made man," and I think it's a really powerful quote, because I don't think anyone is, right. So let me say that I've been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, and I've been willing myself to give myself credit to be vulnerable and ask for help and say, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing, and I want to grow my business." And what started as an intention, right? Plus working hard, right? But you consider the working is going to always happen. So I think being fortunate where I was, and just kind of meeting the right people, but starting at zero, and just make this really practical for someone that might be just starting their journey as a coach. Because I remember I was like, I don't know where the people are going to come from, and it could be scary, right? It's shifting from, I'm looking over there is Manhattan, across the river. you have a salary where it's basically nothing's guaranteed, but you're expecting your pay month over month and year over year, and that's pretty secure. And now you're starting with nothing, quite literally, and you don't have an income and you don't have a salary. So it does, I think, require some courage and a leap of faith. So with all that being said, just putting yourself out there. And I remember graduating CCP, and one of the assignments was, now go find 5 people. At the time, it was 5, and
They're lucky now. They only have to do
yeah,
one, but yeah.
right. Right, go find 5 people and offer your services and put them through the whole experience, right? Body move work, consultation, design them a month of training. And I remember like on my phone just popping up Instagram and putting on my story, like, hat in hand, I'm looking for 5 people free, right? It would help me out tremendously and help me achieve my graduation for CCP. And I think I was fortunate in, like I said, having people that have helped me and being somewhat established in the yoga world and somewhat established in the running world. I definitely wasn't established in the functional fitness world. I wasn't someone that people would be like, oh yeah, you work with Austin. Fortunately, now that's changed through a lot of hard work, right? And putting myself out there. But at the time, I had my one client, his name's Paul. I was training him in yoga, and it was actually at Hudson River, how everything comes full story. And we would look at the gym, and he would be super interested, and kind of his energy kept kind of drifting towards the gym. And was like, hey, like, would you want to train me in that? Like, the yoga is cool, but like, I would love to get back into fitness. It's been years. And I was like, yeah, sure, and let's try it. And obviously scared to death and not know, how am I going to train him? And like, what does this look like? And how are you supposed to train someone for years and years and years? And, just take that ultimate leap of faith. And that was client 1. And then from those 5 people that I did the the CCP graduate work or graduation work with, final project, I think 2 of those people enjoyed the service and signed up as my remote or like individual design clients because they were in person. So that became client 2 and 3. And then I was working, I still do, but I was doing a lot more CrossFit classes at the time too. So also fortunate to Jay and thankful to Jay for offering me that opportunity. And also just partnering with Jay in Hudson Rivers, which is the gym I'm at and the gym I represent. Slowly but surely, just kind of, 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, and, offering a great product. And doesn't mean it was easy, right? There was, people join, people leave. You see the people that stay the long term. And I would say just gradually it grew through referrals, through word of mouth, through Hudson River and the awesome community that Jay has built. And, I'm sure then starting to do more work with OPEX and starting to get myself out there. So I would say that's turned into about 35 clients now, but then that 35, about 10 to 12 is in person, and I'm really fortunate they train multiple times a week, so that's where I spend the majority of my time. But the remote side, right? So that's kind of grown steadily to 20, upwards of 20, and I remember wanting like 5 was like huge, and I still want to continue to grow that offering. But if you told me that like 35, at one point I had 40 people, and I think that's just sustainable for me currently because I spend a good deal of my time in person. But yeah, I was like, wow, it was totally like I never thought that would be just kind of, it really just happened organically, and one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 year at a time. And something growing up, I remember in college in my early 20s, there was a Steve Jobs quote, and he'd said, when you really find what you love, it's like a good marriage, or it's like a great relationship. Like it gets better as the years go on. And I can really say that with my career. It's like year over year, I truly I fall more in love with it. I fall more in love with the, what I'm doing, what I'm creating. And yeah, it's a great relationship. Every year, kind of passion for it, my love for it deepens. And I think in turn, that also helps grow my reach. And I think people just kind of resonate with that. And I can tell you a lot of people have reached out to me and have said, like, we've seen you grow and it's been awesome to watch. And I think it's easy to forget that.
Absolutely. I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you just by things that you've shared. And one is like, what's the biggest lesson? Because I know it sounds like you with these in-person clients in particular, like really invest and connect, and these are long-term relationships.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are some of the best lessons or things that you've learned from your clients?
Wow. That's great. Like a life lesson or more of like, business, like, yeah, because there's so many left.
Yeah, anything. I mean, yeah, maybe I guess if there's anything that stands out to you, maybe about one relationship in particular that's just like been more impactful.
Yeah, I would say right off the bat, what comes to mind is, yeah, like they're like you nailed it, like the growing the relationship and really learning how to develop a relationship and cultivate a meaningful relationship and understanding that it's more than just being a great coach. And I know that was something I first learned through CCP too, which was, basically like it's not so much the best program design. Obviously, you want to be really good at that and you want to ascend to higher and higher skills of program design, but really how much the relationship is the bedrock for a thriving business. And that looks like actually more time outside of the gym, and meaning the little things like going to grab a coffee with your client or going to dinners or going to their parties or going to these social function that they're like literally opening their life to you. And I know some people might be like, well, you have to have boundaries, and there's a way of doing it where you can still, create a respectful and professional relationship. But I've actually found kind of breaking down those barriers between connection really leads to long-term client success, because you really get to know these people and you spend a great deal of time, with your clients. And I would say another lesson that they taught me too is, really not that you're vetting your client, but you're also investing a great deal of yourself as well. So making sure that it's a fit, but it's also extremely rewarding and extremely fulfilling, because yes, you see them grow in the gym, but it's something that I don't think a lot of people realize is you cultivate these meaningful relationships with them outside of the gym. And also that's how you can also grow your business, because they might now trust you and they'll bring, like, hey, like, now, would you like to train my wife? Would you like to train my daughter? Would you like to train my son, my cousin? But naturally, and it's not like you're doing it to get clients. It's just kind of something I've learned can also enrich my life, where I would say going into it would probably be more of a hard, like, separate, like, okay, we train for the 60 minutes or whatever, and then that's about as far as it goes. And I think you definitely need to have boundaries around it, but the right people that will understand that can also make it incredibly rewarding for you. So I would say, yeah, that was a great lesson I've learned, was how great you can create great relationships while doing what you love.
That's awesome. That it's kind of connected to the other question that it sparked for me, which was what part of the coaching process do you personally enjoy the most? Is it the initial assessment and the data collection and the art of kind of solving that initial problem? Or is it the in-person coaching and actually like working with someone hands-on and giving all the cues and refining movement and all those things? Or is it the relationship, or is it the lifestyle pieces, or is it just the challenge of just having this vision of what your practice could look like and building and growing it? Or yeah, there's so many options, but
Yeah.
what's your favorite? What do you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, like the initial, well, of course there's the ongoing, right? And you can love multiple parts, but I would say the favorite is like the initial kind of challenge when someone comes to you and you have to kind of drop what and what you think you're going to do, and really just listen, right? And kind of suspend your ego and first you're in like the intel mode. You're just trying to gather as much information as possible, and of course build rapport, build the building blocks for the relationship, but just really understand this person. Like, who are they? What do they like? What do they dislike? What are their interests? Trying to get a gauge for the type of person they are. Like, do they want to be pushed? Do they need to be pulled back? As you know, right? Different clients have different motivations. So that's always the first step. And then, yeah, like the puzzle of figuring out what works for that person, because as you know, we specialize in individualized coaching and individualized program design. And that's the whole point, is that it's unique, and doesn't mean that principles don't transcend that. And you can use principles with lots of different people, but with that particular client and their particular background and their particular skills, really figuring out, okay, what's going to work for this person. And that is yes, a challenge, but to me, that's the most rewarding part because yeah, you have to, I find it causes me to grow. Like if I'm really interested in it, it will cause me to grow because you'll figure it out. And I think that also helps you grow in your communication skills as well, because you'll engage dialogue with them. How is the training going? What could be better? How can I better serve you? And it just becomes like this ongoing evolution of you're growing with the clients. And so that it's like you never solve it because, just like life, you're always growing and the
You create
training.
the next challenge.
Yeah, exactly. The client's always growing and their priorities might change. Their life might change. They might, job, kids, marriage. So that ongoing challenge of, okay, how can I keep them engaged and how can I keep them motivated to enjoy the training and basically, deliver on what their goals are.
As you've gone through the initial assessment intake kind of process, obviously several times with clients, is there anything that you've changed or added to that process to make that initial experience or solving that initial problem, I don't want to say easier, more simple for whenever blockers are going to surface to in fact surface that you can address them? Or I always find it interesting to kind of poke into the details with how each coach approaches that process.
Yeah, I would say, or for, I just remember too, going through CCP and remembering Carl mentioned when he first started, he was like, wow, half hour is a lot of time. Like to fill up with a client. Then it became like 45 minutes is a lot of time. Then it became like 60. And then it became like 90 is not even enough. So I would say through the growth of the process of doing it and growing as a person, wanting more time in that initial assessment, where in the beginning, or I think people that are uncomfortable with it are like, let's just make it a quick 10-minute call, get through with it and like get to the training. And I've learned that the training is secondary. Really it is, right? The training is actually the easy part. Getting the client to buy in and to trust you and, learn about them. The more time you spend up front, genuinely, but the more time you spend up front, like actually getting to know them, it pays dividends down the road. And I would say as a newer coach, I didn't realize the importance of that and would be more interested of like, let's just get to the training. And as I've grown, I've learned how important it is to, have it off the gym floor. If we could grab a cup of coffee in town for clients that are local, then of course you can Zoom. If I have clients in Japan that I work with too, which is great. But obviously I'm not going to see them. So we'll set up a Zoom or we'll set up a phone call. Yeah, just like in teaching the client, this is going to be an hour if we can, or 90 minutes if you can spare the time. And it's really like, just kind of like we're doing now. It's like, it's going to be all about you. I'm going to ask you tons of questions informally. It's not like I have like a list in front of me and I'm reading it. I think, I think it helps in the beginning, right, to have the questions on the side. But as you get more seasoned and more practice, you just kind of, you follow the rhythm of the conversation. You're just looking for things. Okay, make a note of that, and okay, let's have them explain that a little bit more. But really, really prioritizing and spending the time on the initial consult and like really going deep with the client. And I think that demonstrates your professionalism as a coach, and it also makes your client feel like, wow, like what value I'm getting like this. Because it's really easy to just stamp a program like, oh, you said you want to improve this, okay, here's a program, and say, well, you're not really spending time to get to know that person. So I would say that's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I love that. And do you have a preference? I know you skew more in person. I'm assuming it's because you prefer those in person relationships when you can have them, but balancing with remote, I guess, what are the things that you do differently with your remote clients, or how do you balance that desire to grow both in person and remote, or serve those two audiences?
Yeah, I would like, and that's been growing pains for myself and realizing that with the remote people, especially people that aren't in New Jersey, I live in New Jersey, right? That aren't in New Jersey. Like I said, I have a couple of clients in Japan, some across the country. So for those people, making sure I'm doing not an extra check-in, but making sure I'm giving them as much attention, because I think it's easy to take for granted the in-person relationships, because you are seeing these people fairly often, and the things that like, well, you're like, yeah, of course I have built a relationship. I see them, right? Well, you have to remember these people, their interaction with you is through text, right? Text like CoachRx typing, or so what I've tried to do is especially for more remote only people, use the Loom software and get myself on camera and nudge them to, I put the responsibility on the client to schedule the ongoing consultation, the monthly consult. But I just reminded people like, hey, like it's a new year or it's a new month. Here's my calendar. Let's do this. And so striking that balance, because yeah, it is a challenge, and something I've had to be more cognizant of also with my own time of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to check in on videos here and I'm going to make sure I respond here, because as the communication matters, and you also want to make sure that they feel that they're working with a human and not just an app that just is like, good job. So I would say that's the biggest challenge, but things that I've done differently as well is leveraging technology.
Yeah, no, I love that. When it comes to like your day in the life or systems that you set up to be able to manage your time as an athlete, your time working as a coach, time for your own life and fulfillment, what systems have you set up, or what's like a typical day in the life for you, or weekly layout, just in case
Yeah,
that could be helpful for another coach looking to think about how they might structure their time?
definitely. I would say, again, it always depends on the person. So I know other colleagues in the industry that are remote completely, right? They work from home or they work from wherever and they don't see anyone in person. For me personally, I like the in-person aspect. I like training with people and I like seeing my designs. I'm like, okay, like did this look how I wanted to? So with that being said, having your lifestyle revolve around that, and in a sense, and well, Rob, maybe not the right word, but setting it up so that, yeah, where you're spending time, you're around those people. So it doesn't have to be a CrossFit gym. It makes it a lot easier, or whether it doesn't have to be an OPEX gym, but a gym where there's some sort of like in-person connection. I think that's the first thing. And then for someone that wants to do both, like the training aspect and the client aspect, of course, working at the gym, being at the gym makes it a lot easier. But I would say there are some sacrifices you have to make, in the sense that you're devoting a bit of your time and your schedule to have a block of like, these are my training hours. These are the hours that I take clients on. These are the hours that I write programs. These are the hours that I check in. And it might sound robotic, but for me, and again, this is something where I've even talked with people and mentors about, it's actually okay. I work essentially 7 days a week, but I genuinely love it. And when I say that, it's not that I'm just slaving away and just like grinding hours and hours away. It's just, for me on Sundays, I genuinely enjoy, like, that's my day for majority of programs. And then throughout the week, I write the rest. But Sunday, I kind of set up my week, waking up early, which, I won't say is even my preference, to be honest, but I do it because I always find the value in, okay, I get up early. I take clients at 6 a.m., which actually when I first started, I was like, I don't think I want to do that. But it did work out for me, in the sense that, to your point, you get up early. Okay, you have the sessions in the morning, whether it's like 6 and 7, 7 and 8. But now you have this huge block of time, because you have to realize most clients are training at 6, 7, or 8 a.m. or at 4, 5, 6 p.m. Most, right? Because they're before or after work. So that block of time from 9 or 10 a.m. to 4 is really yours. And that could be a double-edged sword for a lot of people, because you're like, well, I have 6 hours, and it's really easy to, I won't say waste it, but it's just really easy to spend it doing a lot of different things. So for me personally, it's a running joke in my gym community, and everyone knows me. It's like, Austin is either at the gym, at Mojo, which is a coffee company. That's where I do all my work, or he's home sleeping, right? Because that's really where I spend my time. And I've just learned that when I'm at the gym, I'm there for clients, and I'm on, right? I'm physically present. I'm there to talk with people and cultivate relationships, or do my own training. So that's a large amount of time. And I just realized I don't really get my best work done there. People interrupt, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but people want to talk, and it's hard to get into the flow. So I was like, okay, gym is for gym. Okay. I've learned, for me, If I go home, I'm going to either take a nap, put the Netflix on, or read or do something else and work, which is fine. I've just learned that just like trial and error. After like the 20th time of not doing anything, I'm like, okay, this doesn't work. I have found like the mojo joke, but I make it I'm a regular there. I get my iced coffee there, which I love. And I have my Apple headphones, and it's a really nice working space. And I just it's where I do it's kind of where I built my career. So I always thank them too, because that's where I do my creative work. So that works for me, right? That might not work for somebody else. And someone might be like, I don't want to work weekends and Sundays. And for me also on Saturdays is a big training day for me. So I actually was not going to work on Saturday, but a group of my clients, we created, or with me, instead of training multiple hours, I go, okay, I'm going to train 1 hour, and it's open to whoever wants to come out of all my clients. And it's kind of like a private class between like 6 to 8 people. And again, you have to build that trust with your clients to get there. But for me, I've made that okay, I'm going to come in the gym and train anyway, but why not just take some clients? And that's what works for me. And will that change? Yes, it will. And I've constantly updated and reiterated it. But I would say just got to find what works and what makes you happy. And it doesn't matter what anyone says. Like, I like working at 7 in the morning, at sometimes 7 at night, and sometimes just pop it on Sunday to do some program design. And that's the beauty, is it's your schedule. So that's what I would say is, if you like it and it makes you happy, go for it.
How much time are you also spending on, I mean, I'm assuming it's a lot, but I'm going to ask it anyway, like lifestyle behaviors and nutrition? There obviously is a segment of our industry which just coaches those things and stays away from exercise. And as an OPEX coach, obviously bring those two things together and prescribe them holistically. But obviously every client may or may not have the desire to grow in both areas. But with your roster in particular, how much of an emphasis do you place on lifestyle and behavior and nutrition?
Yeah, I would say quite a bit. So back to the initial consultation, we talked like how that's changed in that 60, 90 minutes, really understanding this person's lifestyle. And I think clients need to trust you to really open up, because I think it's not that they think you're judging them, but I don't think people like to admit yeah, actually I don't sleep very often. I don't drink a lot of water. I drink quite a bit of alcohol. Right. This is real, right? You're dealing with real people. And I would say that's the case more often than someone's like, no, I do all the BLGs, right? Basic lifestyle guy. I sleep 8 hours, etc. So understanding who you're working with and understanding what's realistic. And I do try to go for small wins. And in lifestyle, particularly things that I've learned and implemented through OPEX, such as going for walks daily, and making sure you're drinking water and making sure you're eating adequately. And if you're not going to get 8, which I know most people don't get, but at least having a regular time where you're going to bed and waking up and doing the best, moving towards what we would the ideals, right? Because I don't think that's what ideals are for, right? I don't think anyone's perfect. I'm not, definitely not, right? And I definitely miss them a lot. But moving towards okay, we know these are the healthiest versions of ourselves. And I think just being real with people, because I think in the beginning, wanting people to be like, well, you should be, what do you mean you don't do this? Or doesn't it and then realizing that these are people with careers and husbands and wives and kids. And some people have really high profile jobs, captains of industry, super stressful. And some people entertain for a living. So they're like, it's going to be real hard for me to do that. So for doctors and lawyers that have extremely busy schedules. So I think that comes back to the mastery of coaching and being, James would always say this is instead of just kind of beating someone over the head, well, you should be doing this, should be doing this, just being a great example of them in your life and in your behaviors. And I think that's a great teaching tool, and at least having the conversation and hey, if a client's not ready for it, which, experienced coaches, I'm sure know I'm talking about. Newer coaches, some clients just might not be ready to hear that they might want to cut back their drinking, right? Or whatever, or their food, and that's okay, right? It doesn't mean you're not going to be, well, we can't work together, but just understanding where people are at and having a discussion around why they might want to consider making small changes in their BLGs, right? Or in their lifestyle. And ultimately just being a great example in what's, I think, authentic to you. And I think that's the best we can do. And I've found quite a bit of success in kind of meeting people in the middle and being like, okay, what if we added like a 10-minute walk? And then the last thing I'll say to that is letting them see the benefits for themselves. Because as I'm sure we all know, someone can tell us all day and all night about how good sleep is, or why drinking water is really important, or going for a walk in the sun is great. And it isn't until, at least for me, until I go experience it and I'm like, oh, whoa, okay, this feels really good. And moving people in that direction of like do it because it feels good, not because I told you to. And I've found that really can move people in that direction over years. And this is years, but over time.
When you mentioned just being a great example for them, how much of a role has social media or the digital content that you produce enabled you to do that, to show the way your lifestyle behaviors are influencing your day-to-day and your performance? And is that impacting your clients' behaviors or desire to ask you questions or be more willing to have those conversations?
Yeah, I think, being real with people and being like, hey, like, yeah, I totally, a lot of the time may not get my full 8 hours, and I may miss meals here and there. And like, first just leading as a human and being like, I'm a human through all of this. But also I think showing that, like, and it's okay to not be perfect, right? Like, we have these as guideposts and as things that we want to aspire towards, and be like, yeah, on the Sundays when I do really dial in and I do focus on this, it tends to be better. But I think more so for me, like, the example is more of the consistency of showing up and really having it leverage and training, and as a byproduct, the lifestyle factors. And I would say just, yeah, naturally though, to give myself some credit, because I can be really hard on myself of like, you're just showcasing, right? Like, even like the OPEX core values, right? Teach, move, learn, create, like, but in an authentic way. Like, for me, like, I know that's James's thing and that's OPEX's thing, but of like, yeah, like, I really do enjoy teaching something. And that's why I have my whiteboard at the gym. That's another joke, but it's like all my sessions I bought a whiteboard for that exact reason. Because I'm like, I'm going to teach you something. And then sharing like what I'm learning, or what's the current mentoring that I'm doing. And right, that's authentically me of like, yeah, I'm learning, I'm reading, I'm wanting to grow my brain. And then the health, like the lifestyle pieces, I'm training. Everyone knows, I mean, I train. I would say you don't have to train as much as I do just because I'm training for sport, but of the consistency, right? That's what I more try to show. Like, and it will be challenging, and you will not always improve, and you will question it and still show up. And then also just like getting outside for walks and sharing really, like, my walks and my runs and the food I'm eating, or basically, yeah, just like how I'm spending my time in a way that's aligned with my goals. And I think that's the truest representation, because that's to me authentic, and that's to me what I think resonates with people. Like, yeah, like, I'm a human and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to miss the mark a lot, but I'm going to do my best towards these things. And I think that's all we really can ask is we just try to be great examples and also admit where we messed up. And I've also found that endears people to you, because they realize you're a person and you're not just this like talking head coach.
Yeah, so important. When you like look back at the last couple of years in this journey that you had, is there something that you're like, man, I wish I would have done that differently, or I wish I would have spent more time here, or anything that pops up as a learning that you'd want to share with other coaches?
I would say in the moment, probably yes. When you're emotional about things, you're like, oh, I wish that wouldn't happen. And oh, that was such a waste of time. I think as if you can really be disciplined, and it's just things I've learned through conversation, it's like those mistakes actually, were meant to happen. And I don't mean that as like, say, take the a spiritual context out of it. But I always find like, when I get more space and more time has passed from those periods in my life, when you're close to it, of course, you're like, wow, I wish that didn't happen, waste of time, waste of money, whatever. But then as you grow, as you get further along in your life and you get perspective, and so I think I am a big fan of philosophy and therapy, and like just like ways of like, how can I elevate my view of myself and the world? You realize, well, actually, no, that was great, but it takes time to get there. And I'm the first person that when I'm in it, I'm like upset and I'm complaining. But to look back and be like, well, actually, I needed to make those mistakes. And of course, no one wants to lose a client, right? Nobody wants to fumble on program design or drop the ball. Those mistakes or shortcomings, I think are ultimately, like, especially if you talk to like someone who's been doing something for a really long professional and anything, they're like, well, yeah, that's how you become a professional. You have to learn how to make those setbacks and how to take the setbacks, how to make those mistakes, how to grow from it. Because I've ultimately found, like, if you can choose an empowering meaning around it of like, whoa, I actually didn't have such a great past couple months business wise. Instead of looking at like, well, why me? I've actually always found those have propelled me to where I'm at. And to just be really specific, like the fear, right? Of, well, I don't know if I can take on this client, or how can I work with that person? They're like super advanced, propelled me to, well, I better figure this out, and which looks like mentorship, enrolling in CCP, right? Well, I don't have a career. What am I going to do? Doing those things where you kind of have to scramble. I don't want to take that away from me, because it's like, well, then you would never grow. So I can't really say I regret any of that. I would say the only thing maybe I would do differently would be to get in like a mentorship, or to, be in that ongoing coaching sooner. But ultimately you have to get to that for yourself. But that would be the only thing I would change, would be like just doing it sooner, right? Like getting a mentor I trust, or really finding someone that I can kind of latch onto and be like, please, teach me. Like, I'm willing to learn.
I love that. And what are you looking forward to most?
Yeah.
Just because we're closing the chapter on 2024, we're
Yeah,
going
yeah.
into a new year. And obviously you have reached this period of like, okay, I've achieved this initial success, right? With coaching in person, having my remote business doing very well. What's the thing that you're thinking about next or chasing after next?
Yeah, for sure. And it's scary to vocalize it, but I know for me, the next step is some sort of ownership. And whether that's opening up a brick and mortar space, I'm not going to be like super specific with the details, because I kind of like to say, like, let the universe fill in the details as it always does, but just kind of put it out there, and some sort of ownership, whether that's a remote company, right? Or a brick and mortar somewhere. And just kind of stepping into leadership. And I see that as my next growth. And what pulls me is wanting to create something and continue with what I'm doing, because it's been working. But yeah, I find that that's the next step. And what calls to me is like some sort of leadership, some sort of mentorship, some sort of ownership in a business within fitness, of course. But that's what gets me out of bed, and where I'm like, whoa, I can't wait to see like how 2025 grows, and these opportunities to share and educate and teach. So I would say, yeah, that's what's on the horizon for me.
So exciting. We didn't get to talk at all much about your LearnerX course, but I do want to give that some love. Will you just share a little bit about what that course is about and why you were passionate about creating it?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a yoga teacher, not by trade anymore. I don't teach classes anymore, but I've spent many, many years learning and teaching yoga and mobility at that, and spent years and years and years with people and with bodies, right? Running, yoga, tennis, CrossFit, powerlifting, bodybuilding. And you just start to see certain themes. And that is something always like, that was like my thing before I got into coaching fitness, was I was the yoga guy. So people came to me for stretching, right? Flexibility, mobility, tie in the lifestyle guidelines like rest and relaxation, mindfulness, breathing. And I found that it would have been, in my opinion, thought would be a great add to CCP and to OPEX and into the broader OPEX community. And like I said, like that at the time, that was like my 2024, 2023 growth was like, okay, I want to create a LearnRx class. Like, that was the next step. And I basically just compiled everything that I've kind of learned through my own body, right? The theme there, right? Of my own yoga practice, teaching, at this point, thousands of people yoga, athletes. I've worked with athletes. I was a strength and conditioning coach. I forgot to mention that earlier, for a college team, and just like making it really practical. But what really made it fun was tying it to our OPEX parlance and our OPEX language, and our, our 6 patterns, right? Squat, bend, lunge, or push pull. And the intent was, how do I use, because I made it with the OPEX coach in mind. Okay, we all understand this framework. We have the 6 patterns, we have our lifestyle guidelines, we have our movement assessment, and with the team, with your feedback, with some of the other members of the OPEX team, we're just kind of refining it and being like, whoa, like, we can really leverage these things that I think coaches do anyway, of like, do lizard lunge or do pigeon or do a banded hip distraction, and just kind of connecting the dots in a way that was like, well, if this client is short or limited in the scratch test, right? That's classic test, or they can't touch their toes, or they can't the active straight leg raise. Here are some yoga poses that can help, just as a nice addition. And to me, also it was awesome to contribute to the CoachRx library and record the poses as well. And as someone who does the stretches too, and finds a lot of value in them, and also prescribing them to my clients and just teaching them to thousands of people, athletes, CrossFit members, you name it, people in the city. I used to teach chair yoga. So you just start to see what works. And to me, that it was just super, and it still is super exciting to connect what we do in OPEX and just add another tool to the coach's toolkit. And also lastly, to say, just to empower them to say, like, if you needed to prescribe mobility for a client for whatever reason, or you wanted to create like a flow, being like, here it is.
I love that. Do you remember how many exercises did you film for the library?
It was a bunch, I would say.
I think it was over 100.
Yeah, we added a lot, and it was a lot. It was a ton of fun. And you just start to see too, like, just patterns, right? Oh, that's a bend, that's a hinge, that's a push, that's a pull. There's your single leg, there's your core, and yeah, just you're just you're giving it away, and in a way, you always get it back. So I thought it was a ton of fun. And if anyone ever has questions about it, I'm always open to talk about it, chat about it.
Did we end up adding any of those mobility flows that if you started like a template of them into the programs library as well, or not yet?
I know they're in, like, if you type it in, like on the like, if you when you go
The
like
exercise library.
the exercises, right? And there would be like, it would say like hip flow or bend flow or
Oh, okay.
upper body flow, but I don't know if it was.
It's in the warm-ups and cool downs. That's
Yes,
where it is.
there you go. That's where it is.
Okay, cool. So if you're in CoachRx and you're needing those mobility exercises, Austin, you'll see his face and his body performing those demos for you. But then also check out the warm-ups and cool downs library in your index. And there'll also be some pre-populated flows for specific use cases in there. And so, yeah, I'm glad we got to at least like promote that and let people know that it's there, because I think so many people don't realize how many hidden gems are in that index for them.
Yeah, you just gotta, that's exactly. And it's like, the more you get in the habit of just like doing it, right? Being in CoachRx, it's like the more time you spend in there too, I think that the skill of using it improves. And just exactly to your point, you just say, if you don't know, then you're like, oh wow, I have this all right here. I can just do this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Austin, for just spending the time with me and sharing your journey and the learnings along the way. And I know it's going to be inspiring for, obviously, we have so many coaches in the network that are career coaches or coaches that are just starting out in their journey. And we'll pop this up on YouTube and the podcast channels as well, so that anyone can listen. And I know they'll be inspired and feel the value from this. So thank you for doing that with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And I look forward to seeing it and our continued work together as we move through 2025.
I'll drop all the ways that people can contact you in the description, but is there any preferred channel that you'd like people to find you on?
Right now, Instagram, Coach Austin Kapp, and that's with a K, Coach Austin KAP. That's usually the easiest way to get in contact with me. I used to have a YouTube channel, but I would say, let's keep it simple, Instagram.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Austin.
You're very welcome. See you soon.
I'm going to stop recording real quick.